on my chip outs, man. I got this, yeah.
And now, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to listen to Reece and Dan on the Ankle Pick Pod.
Welcome back, ankle pickers. We're here for the first episode of 2023, and we have a full house. Both the Koritz brothers are here. Gentlemen, how are we this evening?
Doing well. What up? What up?
Vibes are excellent.
Vibes are excellent. So let's just call a spade. We already posted. So it's not the first episode of 2023. I lied. We posted our futures and our predictions for weight classes, who will hold gold. So that episode is already live. But this is our first normal episode as we break down UFC Fight Night Strickland Imavov that is happening on January 14th. So we're recording this Thursday night. It should go live Friday morning if Country Club's on his schniz.
I'm on my schniz.
Good stuff. So
Plus
Kobe,
YouTube Friday morning.
I guess you can just take it from here, Kobe, and kind of organize how you want to organize it, because this is we don't have a recap of any UFC event since it's been 4 months. Well, it feels like 5 years. But where do you want to take this? Where do you want to take this, Jean?
I want to take this to New Year's Eve. Let's get Bellator Rising. Let's get our international correspondent, DK. Chop it up.
Yeah, this was my taste of what the European fans get to experience on a weekly basis. I got, what was it? I think it was like a 2 a.m., 3 a.m. prelim start. And yeah, I worked my way around a fucking VPN for Canada, bought that pay-per-view. Man, $15 pay-per-views. Those are nice. But what a show they put on. The walks to the ring were phenomenal. It felt like a WWE event, especially Juan Archuleta. Shout out to him. But ultimately, Bellator cleaned up. It was a really fun, really cool event. I was talking about it all weekend, probably because there was no UFC, but also just because, man, it was freaking cool. Champ versus champ across the board. Just a sweet event.
Rumor around town, Bellator sweep. Is this true?
Yes, sir.
The other rumor around town is that AJ McKee dropped a fortune on his walkout gear.
I think that the majority of the broadcast was putting on and taking off walkout gear. There was a couple people that had full-on teams having to disrobe them, whether it was samurai gear or Archuleta's like
AJ
warrior.
McKee's claim is that he spent $100,000 on his walkout samurai armor.
That's not surprising. I was all night I was thinking in my head like Deontay Wilder-esque. Hopefully no one's got too heavy of walkout gear.
Yeah, that was an all-time fail. Good. I'm glad the event was good. I'm actually kind of now hearing Dan talk about it, I'm actually a little bummed I missed it.
Well, speaking of a little bit bummed, let's touch on this ankle lock Manfred situation that's been all the rage over the last month. I guess on the bright note, we did end up winning our ankle lock game. Finished in first place, final record of 17-3, more than 51 units green. Phenomenal effort from your ankle pick pod boys. And then all hell broke loose. Yeah. I'll let y'all get your opinions out there. For a while, it was looking like we were not going to get paid, trying to cut deals. The money had been gambled away. It's looking more and more like we might end up getting paid. We're a little bit further down the line, but I'll leave it open for you guys. You guys take it how you want.
Oh, I have to say, or go ahead, Dan. Mine's short and sweet.
Yeah, mine's a little short too. I'm pissed. I definitely wanted to get paid. I wanted the contest to be above board. Sucks it isn't. Manfred's burned his bridge with me. Hopefully he pays me, but I mean, that's just whatever. I want the money. I don't think that we're ever going to make content with him, and I don't think that I'll ever consume his content, and I don't want him to be gambling just for his own health. But yeah, really I just want the money.
Yeah, my take's actually not vastly different from Dan's, but first off, if you followed us or followed us for a while or followed us at all, you're not surprised we took that challenge down. Let's be real. 17-3 on the ankle lock, and that's just a taste because that's only the second half. We've been crushing ankle locks for the last 3 years, so that part, not surprised. That challenge was kind of tailored for our bread and butter, where we have an ankle lock. If we have to make an ankle lock, we get the ankle lock done. So that part, unsurprising. With the whole downfall about Manfred gambling the cash away, lying.
To me, that was super surprising.
Yeah.
I had been talking to Kobe behind the scenes all year saying, like, there's no way that this guy had built up this whole status just to, and personal image to throw it all away like this.
Yeah. It's honestly, and the reason why my take's a little different is because it's honestly sad. It's sad from a perspective of there's different scandals and different issues every day with people who have severe gambling addiction. And I know there was actually something that broke the other day where some famous YouTuber who has like 250,000 subs or something gambled everyone's money away on stake for some project he was doing. So it's a problem, and it's not okay. And I'm not defending Manfred. He should never have lied in the first place. This whole thing's definitely a problem.
It built on itself quite a bit.
Yeah. I think that the reason why I'm leaning towards forgiving him and not necessarily trusting him with money or joining competitions, but forgiving him in full is it seems like he's doing everything he can to make it right. Like, I genuinely believe that Manfred is a good person who made a really, really big mistake. And that happens. And I know that Gordo gambles, he got paid and he was the big one, so good. I'm glad that it seems to have the ball rolling. And I necessarily don't know if I'll believe what Manfred says, or if I'll forgive him for the delay or whatever. I know it's a problem, but I think on like a human level, I've thought a lot about it, and sometimes things get away from us, and people who are undisciplined can chase their losses or think they got a bad beat or whatever. And I feel bad for the guy. I'm sure he's had family repercussions. I know he's had business repercussions. Like you said, Dan, he's built 10,000 followers plus 11,000 followers, and no one respects him or wants to consume his content anymore, where we only have 500. So we know how hard it is to build that platform. So, he's probably out of this industry. His family probably is coming down on him. He did a really stupid thing, but if we get paid in full, he's good with me. I just, the whole situation's more sad than angering for me, because it's sad to watch someone's whole life get kind of thrown away over a really big mistake. But again, I mean, let's talk.
Definitely sad. Yeah.
Let's
talk. Communicated with us even
me too.
Tiny little bit.
Yeah. It's scary though, because that this is what he knew was going to happen. But it's sad. And so I guess my real thing is I hope Manfred gets the help he needs. I hope Manfred can get redemption in the sport that he clearly loves. I hope Manfred can be forgiven, but at the same time, he needs to make things right. And it seems like, from what I've seen, he is slowly doing that by paying people. Because there is a world, let's be real, where he disappears. No one's actually going to do anything. The whole contest you know what I mean? There's little legs to stand on in a court of law, whatever crap. So he's doing it out of realizing that he's at fault. So I wish nothing but the best for Manfred, and I hope we get paid sooner rather than later. The second thing I want to touch on, which is crazy news and what's been packed with a crazy year, is I think something that is 1,000 times worse than anything Manfred's even sniffed, and that's the Dana White situation.
That was exactly where I was going next.
Look, I've never claimed Dana White is a good person. I know that there was a biography his mom wrote where the success he kind of got lost in the success. She doesn't recognize her son anymore. And there were things like that. And look, we all, as MMA and UFC fans, owe Dana White so much, because what he's done for this sport is truly unlike any other commissioner or president of any other sport. I mean, getting the sport legalized in a ton of states, ton of countries, getting the sport mainstream, getting these fighters where you can actually make a living. He's done so much. However, he said it, everyone says it, you don't come back from putting your hands on a woman. In my opinion, it might be old school. I know some fighters have come to defend Dana. Jamel Hill is one of the main names where he's been saying that she struck first, so it's fair game. Really concerning stuff like that. And I know Dana came out today and said, don't defend me, because I know Sugar Sean O'Malley defended him. A lot of guys came to his defense, and that within itself is concerning for me. And so I think, luckily for me, I've never had to witness anything with like my close family, my mom or no one's ever had to deal with anything like that. But I might be an old school person, but you never lay your hands on a woman. You never get close to laying your hands on a woman. And so for that, Dana White, that is someone, unlike the Manfred situation, where I don't see myself forgiving or really having the same respect I did for him ever again. And that's a real problem.
Dan and I are University of Texas graduates, and we had a similar situation even in the past few months with our head basketball coach, Chris Beard, who was finally recently let go permanently. And I can't tell you what a breath of fresh air it was to just have, finality to the situation where you're right. You don't come back from something like that. And obviously it's a much more difficult, and we can't just get rid of Dana White. That's not how this is going to end. It's not even close to
I think it might. And the reason why I think it might is because Endeavor is a publicly traded company, and they own the UFC. And if they start feeling stock pressure or board pressure or serious pressure from investors, because when the news broke, Endeavor stock did drop. I think
Dana White's name is UFC, and UFC is Dana White. There's a lot of carnage that's involved in that I'm not necessarily saying it can't happen, but I'm saying that we're for the worst probably without Dana along the way. I'm not saying that he deserves that he deserves to stick around or whatever. I'm not trying to stick up for Dana at this point.
No, I know, but no, Dana's
a lot of carnage involved, and no matter what happens, it's just
Dana's done a lot of heavy lifting for sure. But us as a community need to realize that Dana White isn't going to be around forever, isn't going to live forever, and isn't going to do this forever. And that's the reality of it. And so the question is, do we wait 10 years, put this behind him and us, and just pretend like it didn't happen, or pretend like, but that video that came out yesterday at the press conference where he said, my punishment is I have to live being labeled like this. That is a bullshit punishment. What if Henry Ruggs' punishment was, I have to be labeled as a drunk driver now?
It's not a punishment. I mean, it's a brutal audio clip, video clip, whatever it is. No one wants to hear that shit.
The one other thing that I want to mention, and again, this is assuming, so I don't want to make this news, but Dana White kept saying over and over again that alcohol was involved, and this was the first time.
That's not an excuse either.
It's definitely not an excuse. But if I've known anything from my time, when something this severe happens, I would be truly shocked if this was the first time. Now that's the assuming, but I just think where I'm at
that's where my head went too. Things that happen like this in public,
that bad,
if it's not the first time it's happened in private.
And so the way I look at it is, he's the face of the sport. He's the face of the company. He is in charge of image, fighter pay, and he has cut fighters for this. He has put fighters on blast for similar incidents. He has said himself well before this event that you don't come back from this. I think he needs to be a man, and I know he's kind of trying to steer into it, but it's a really bad look. So I hope 2023 cools.
I don't think this is the end of it. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
We're nowhere near the end of this. It's going to live with him as long as he's still involved, and we'll see where that goes from there.
I just really wanted to say that obviously none of us come even close to defending him or condoning it. And I do want to say for those who do watch this program that if you're behind the fighters who are defending it, or if you're someone who defends that type of action, then you really need to consider on what actually happened, because it's bad. And look, I don't want to hold anything against Jamel Hill or Sean O'Malley or any of those guys. I know that they're just speaking what they believe, and I'm all for open forum discussions. But this is one of those issues that I think out of everything that's happened so far in 2023, and it's a lot, between Manfred and fucking Baroni murder and all this stuff. A lot of fight cancellations. We've gotten off to a rocky start, but this one is the one that I hope more than anything we get some resolve, kind of like what you said with the Chris Beard situation, because, as fans of this sport, there's so many times where we get judged or people don't understand. They're like, oh, you're watching modern gladiators. Oh, this sport's disgusting. It's hard to watch, whatever. Dana's legitimized that. And now that he's, laying his hands on his wife, it definitely makes it feel back to what is this sport, and so it's sad. So I wanted to touch on that, but Manfred might be getting an easy walk in my eyes, because the situation that I'm the most upset about is the Dana White one.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, nothing to add. Completely deplorable. Want him gone.
Let's keep it moving with some fighter news. Demetrius Magulov announced that he's retired due to health complications. Real sad if that's the last we see of Demetrius Magulov. I know he's a favorite of us on the pod. Anything else to add there?
Well, I don't want to pry or anything, and I know it would be all speculative to even pretend like I know what the health situation is. But I do want to mention, for those people who are hoping to see Demir again, there's a lot of guys who step away from this sport for mental health reasons. Jimmy Flick, a guy fighting this weekend, is a good example of that, where he stepped away for his mental health, and he's now coming back after he seemed to have his ducks in a row. I know Brad Riddell has talked similarly too, with the mental health aspect. And the biggest, most acclaimed one out of all, George St. Pierre. He stepped away from the sport for good for a long period of time in his prime for the mental woes. So look, I have no idea what's going on with Demir. If it's physical, I wish him nothing but a speedy recovery. If it is mental, I wish him nothing but a speedy recovery, hopefully figuring out what's triggering it. But I do hope that whatever it is, we do see Demetrius Magulov again. So the reason why I mention that is because I want people to hold out hope that Demir hopefully can go back to fighting if that's something he wants to do.
We'd love to see him.
And I know Dan was a huge Magulov guy. I mean, from a fight style standpoint and from just the way he handled Yoel Alvarez, I remember Danny Prospect King. He's someone that Danny turned me on to early. So sad.
Speaking of prospects, we had the UFC sign a prospect, Shara Magomedov. Dan, do you have info on this man? 17-0, 13-0, 13 knockouts. Kickboxing backgrounds.
I was about to say, turn to Dan. Don't even bother asking me. This is Danny's wheelhouse.
I mean, I wish I had something more specific. I really only have seen what everyone's been reposting online. He looks like a dangerous guy and completely marketable. Fiery red hair.
Got that.
That's Dan's prospect. Fiery red hair.
Ankle pick pod red hair.
What's crazy too is it's like you're seeing the Imavov style of and I know people label him as France, but he's from Dagestan, or the Umar Nurmagomedov style, where these guys are just vicious on their feet. And then you got the normal style that you think of, and like the Khabib Dagestani handcuff smother him. There is going to be somebody who merges the two flawlessly, and we will have a perennial beast. Like Islam striking is horrible, but like what's Imavov's wrestling look like? Like we're gonna find a merger. Maybe it's gonna be this kickboxing freak show that has red hair.
All right, I'm ready to rattle through some fight announcements.
All right, I'll try to keep quiet, but I'm excited.
Jack Della Maddalena, my boy, Randy Brown in Perth on February 11th.
A live murder in Perth on February 11th.
Shocked that's sanctioned.
Tyler Santos and Aaron Blanchfield, two names we were both hot on in the Division Futures episode. That is February 18th.
So did this fight get announced pre or post the Division Futures episode?
Before. It was announced before, but we hadn't talked about it.
Okay. The only reason why I'm wondering is because I feel like that could affect the odds. Winner of that is guaranteed number one contender, right? Or am I missing something?
I think winner of that gets Val.
Right? So, like, if you could
You
play...
could take both. I think that they were 9 and 6,
they
right?
They were. So that's what I'm saying. You could take both and get a free shot at a Shevchenko upset. So that's interesting. Or if you have a strong opinion on one, let's say you really believe Blanchfield wins that fight, take her future to hold gold.
Same night, Chito Vera and Corey Sandhagen.
No way. I missed this. Wow.
8 UFC 8 packs though.
So what the fuck's happening with Sugar? Sugar Cejudo? That's weird. Okay, interesting.
There's a lot of moving pieces there.
Dan, who do you like in that one out of curiosity?
It's funny because I think Corey Sandhagen will dominate 1 and 2. Cheeto will dominate 4 and 5, and it's all about that third round.
So Dan's on the over.
We've got a rebooking for the Bo Nickel Jamie Pickett fight, March 4th.
Okay, that's actually a live murder.
This is news to you guys too, but I met a buddy of Bo Nickel's while I was in Mexico, wrestled at Penn State. So might have a little inside track there.
That would be awesome.
That'd be sweet.
You better bought that guy drinks all weekend.
I did.
Good man.
Derek Brunson, Dricus Duplessis is the same night, March 4th.
Question, blonde Brunson or not blonde Brunson?
Last we've seen, it's blonde. We have, all right, let's talk UFC San Antonio, which is March 25th. Danny will be there. I will not, unfortunately. I'm double booked. Reese, I'm praying will be there with us.
There. Kobe's a loser.
Sean Brady and Michelle Pereira.
Now that's a fun fight. Stylistically, rubber meets the road there.
Let's call a spade a spade. That's a good one.
And unfortunately, Kai Kara France has been injured. He was supposed to fight Alex Perez. Instead, Manel Cape will be fighting Alex Perez. And we talked about that one a little bit on the Division Futures episode.
What was the injury? How severe is it?
I don't have it. We'll get the stats department on that.
Well, a lot of time with combat sports, they just say undisclosed anyways. But I'm more just curious because if it's something severe, that could really shake the division up.
2 weeks later, April 8th, Adrian Yanez and Rob Font.
Stylistically, that's a dream fight because finally Adrian Yanez we're going to be able to see what he can do against a real striker. You know what I mean? That is a fun one.
And the last thing, as we transition into this week, we have obviously the news this week, short notice, Kelvin Gastelum out. Sean Strickland, short notice, will be replacing him against Nasruddin Imavov. That's the main event of UFC Vegas 67 here, Saturday, the 14th. 3 p.m. Central Time prelims, 6 p.m. Central Time main card.
Sweet. So anyone who followed on Twitter saw that I posted my first official play. It was Imavov against Gastelum. I love that spot for him. I also like this spot. I did lower the units because of the question marks around short notice. I know I'm jumping to the head of the card, but the line's moving like a runaway train. That's the reason why I wanted to mention. I got 110 on DraftKings, and I saw it's already 130. So get it while she's hot. But Dan, let's start. And so this is, like Kobe mentioned, Strickland Imavov. This Saturday, and it starts at 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern for the prelim. So you can go out and celebrate, have a good time after. So Priscilla Cachoeira versus Sajara Eubanks, Dan, at 125. This one shook me to my core because what the line is. It's Sajara Eubanks minus 245, Cachoeira plus 210. So I get it. Sahara Eubanks can wrestle, and Priscilla Cachoeira has 0 wrestling. But we're still talking about 12-4 versus 7-7. And the 7-7 is quite the big favorite. What's your take on this?
Predictable take, dog or pass. You won't catch me paying a big old favorite price on Sarge. I doubt she even makes weight. I know that we're gonna have weigh-ins tomorrow morning, and this might be posted as you're watching weigh-ins, but look out for that one. It's
just crazy too, because it opens pretty close to even. I don't want to like quote that, but it should say, I'm using fightodds.io these days, but it is run up since open, and I'm not sure where people are getting this confidence on a Sajara Eubanks. I know she kicked the brakes off of, what was her name? Elise Reed. Where was Sajara Eubanks the massive dog? Maybe I'm thinking of someone else, but
she was a favorite over Elise Reed.
Julia Vila. I don't know. But this one's really interesting to me. I thought dog or pass, but it sounds like it's going to be a double pass, because I just don't trust either of these women enough from what they've shown me to put hard-earned cash there. It's pretty much, it really does just come down to that. Next fight on the card, Jimmy Flick versus Charles Johnson. And this one's very interesting because currently where it sits, Jimmy Flick is plus 285, Charles Johnson minus 345. But it gets weirder because it opened at Charles Johnson minus 134. And it got as high as like minus 500. High 480s, 490s, 500s. And it's finally tapered back, settled in around 350. Dan, I like Flick in this one, man. I like Flick in this one for one reason and one reason only. He's got a very disgusting dynamic submission game. And Charles Johnson, as active as he is, as good of a striker as he is, he's well-rounded. But let's be real. He lost that fight to Zhalgas Zhumagulov. He was losing every round to Carlos Mata before he knocked him out. And he got dominated by Mikhaev. I know people are low on Jimmy Flick because they're not quite sure why he's returning. They haven't seen him in a very long time. But he flying triangled Cody Durden in his UFC debut. He got a triangle choke in his Contender Series fight. I think the submission is open.
I would agree with you, and I wanted to be on the Flick side. Ultimately, this is another pass for me. The thing about Johnson, although I don't think he should be this kind of favorite, and based on the price, I might end up throwing a sprinkle at Flick.
That's my problem. Yeah.
His best two qualities, though, are his takedown defense and his submission defense. And a guy in Flick who isn't the best wrestler, I think is going to have trouble getting this fight to the mat. And when he does, I just don't see him being able to finish somewhere that Muhammad Mokaev had so much trouble. I do see this one being a pretty boring fight, and I don't think that Johnson covers the price at all. I just think that the way that Flick wants to get this done happens to be where Charles Johnson is the most sound.
So this is actually interesting because your take is the same as mine. The problem is I feel like the line has run up too far, and people have agreed because it's come back from that 500. But is the 350 still too expensive? I guess it could just be a pass. I mean, at PK, I'm taking Charles Johnson. At even like minus 150, I probably like Charles Johnson, but 350 for a guy as dangerous as Jimmy Flick feels like it's run out. But you're right. It might end up being a pass. Daniel Argueta, and he has his short notice opponent Nick Aguirre. And let's see when it got canceled. So Argueta lost Isaac Bulgarian on really recently. So this is his short notice opponent Nick Aguirre. Aguirre is 7
It's
and
got to be Aguirre, right? Or Aguirre.
Aguirre. Dan, do you know?
We'll find out Saturday.
Yeah, this is super short notice. But this guy's 7-0 and he has 7 finishes, I believe. Yeah, he does. All first round, 1 second round in his most recent fight. So it is against guys. It is against guys though that are 1-1, 0-2.
Shocking level of opponent. I was going to.
And then on the other side, you got Daniel Argueta, who has fought Damon Jackson in the UFC, and then also had a long LFA stint as well. So he's no stranger to the octagon. What the line's out of control here, Dan. It's Argueta minus 250 or 520. Geez, sorry, had a brain spaz. And Aguirre plus 410. Where do you take this? I mean, is there a sprinkle on the guy who's fought bums, or I mean, there's no value on the Argueta side, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. This card's really tough because everyone like you and I sat around for 5 weeks and beat up these lines. And it really feels like come fight week, a lot of them are unplayable, especially with the amount of short notice replacements we have. And I'm just not going to trust my money on a guy who's only been a pro fighter for like 2 years and has fought cans. And that being said, I wasn't so impressed by Argueta. I think that his most impressive showing was a loss to Damon Jackson, where he just kind of hung around. I do agree he should probably win this. He's a wrestler at his base, but I don't think he's a great fighter. His striking's not great technically. I mean, he moves forward and optically it looks like he's winning moments, but this is a huge pass for me.
Yeah, this whole card feels like it's almost taped together with Scotch tape. I mean, it is fallen apart. And I mean, we're 3 fights in already. And I can honestly tell you that you would think having 4 weeks off of no fights, the card would look a little meatier than where we're at. Alan Nascimento taking on Carlos Hernandez at 125. Nascimento finds himself at a whopping minus 330. Carlos Hernandez plus 275. This line opened at Nascimento minus 190. And like Dan said, people sitting around all week or last 4 weeks. It opened on January 2nd. And by the time January 3rd came rolling around, it was already at the 350 mark. And it's kind of plateaued since. I mean, look, I love Nascimento in this spot. I don't love Nascimento at the price. And the bigger problem is Nascimento, not a finisher, but he can. So it's like, do I do the submission? Do I do the decision? I like Nascimento. I don't know how to even get a play on him with this current price.
And everything that I read on the Hernandez guy seems like a capable grappler on paper.
The split decision to Victor Altamirano really turned me off. And then he actually lost his split decision on the Contender Series, and they gave him the W on his Contender Series split decision. And it was like, I remember at the time going into the decision, he was Live Pro Plus. And then he lost, and then the Victor Altamirano was similarly sketchy. So when you step up to a guy like Alan Nascimento, in my opinion, it's going to be out of his skill set, out of his wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a huge step up. The only thing that I have hesitations about Nascimento is he's the kind of guy that accepts being off his back, and he's dangerous there, and he's working there, but he doesn't do a lot of sweeps to win minutes.
Yeah. So you could see someone paying the minus 330 on Nascimento and then finding out that he lays on his back for 3 rounds trying to rip off a sub.
I could see Hernandez winding up in another sketchy split decision.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be holding a big minus 350 ticket when that happens.
Yeah. The only way for me to approach Nascimento, because sub and decision are so likely if he does win this, I think my approach is going to be maybe a parlay with some of the bigger favorites up the card that we're getting to. So Jahavid Bashrat is taking on Mateus Mendoka. How do you do that in Brazil, that C with the little underscore thing? But I'm going to call him Matus for now. Javid Basharat and Matus are, oh, there's Matus Rebecki on this card. Shit, I can't call Matus. Mendonca. So we got Basharat, Mendonca, Basharat minus 315, Mendonca plus 260.
And this is a parlay piece I'm actually into.
Well, line opened at Basharat minus 260, so it has steamed a little bit. But
yeah, and I agree with the steam. He's a guy who we saw. I mean, we pay very close attention to Tony Gravely fights, and Basharat picked him apart. I know that Tony won the first round on the scorecards, but that was a little bit of a toss-up for me. Basharat is extremely dangerous everywhere, especially on the feet with his footwork, his accuracy. He fights at a steady but super fast pace. He can wrestle and took down Tony, who's an All-American, who's an American top team, absolute beast when it comes to his wrestling chops. So I do like this Basharat spot as a parlay piece. I think this is a guy the UFC is building. He's undefeated. I don't think that a guy like Mendonca is on the same level as a Gravely.
Are you concerned, though, about Mendonca's ability to finish via submission, via KO? I mean, he's young, he's powerful, he's got a big frame for 35. Are you worried that you're going to be holding a ticket on a guy who can get that flash KO? Or do you think Basharat's got, from what you've seen, the fight IQ to kind of keep that at bay?
I think Basharat's got it covered. I think that everyone's real dangerous when you get down to it. And I don't think that a guy like Mendonca is even as dangerous as a Trevin Jones in terms of one-punch power.
Okay. I like that. So now we're getting more to kind of unbettable lines here. Mateusz Rebecki, a guy who got a pretty dominant decision on the Contender Series this last season, is taking on Nick Fior. And Fior is another really short notice replacement. The line is Mateusz Rebecki minus 740. Nick Fior plus 540. But what's interesting about this one is Fior, I believe, is another, I'm right, short notice replacement. No, or am I? Yeah, he's replacing Omar Morales, short notice. And so what's interesting about this one, it's another guy making his UFC debut. He's 6-0, and he fought a 5-19. 15-13, 8-4, 3-9. Jay Ellis, 15-98, and then Jay Ellis again, 15-91 when Jay Ellis fought that first time. So you have a guy who's had the definition of zero formidable pro performances, although he is 7-0. I mean, how do you cap someone who you haven't seen? You know, I don't know how to approach this one. Rebecki by finish, is that line out of reach? I don't know, Dan. What's your angle here?
I'm more just excited for this one as a fan. Okay. Nick Fiore is what I might screw up the number here, but he's a member of New England Cartel. I think he's the third one of 4 total to fight in the UFC. I mean, we're talking personal training from Tyson Chartier. He's managed by Tyson Chartier. He's getting all of his rounds in with Bob Font and Calvin Cater. I've heard a lot about his jiu-jitsu. So it's definitely super short notice, a major step up in competition. But man, I'm excited to see how he handles it. He's a black belt at Henzo Gracie Philly, which is a camp that we talk about a whole lot on this show. So I'm hoping that we get to watch some of his grappling.
Well, my question for you then is there a world where a ticket at Fiore plus 540 is worth holding on to because of the type of sparring partners he has? He is 155. That's right in their wheelhouse. Do you think that there's a game plan / stylistic angle he can approach with his training partners that make a 540 ticket worth it? Or is this just too much too fast, you know?
I struggle to find a great read on Rebecki. I think that obviously he's a tank. He's going to press forward and look for that takedown, the ground and pound, the smash. I don't know if he's absolutely world class at that or not, and that's where that's where I hesitate on my read, but I'll probably end up on with an untracked lottery ticket or from some New England cartel.
Okay.
For
Okay.
fun.
That's what I'm
Um,
glad I asked. I'm glad I
I
asked.
won't recommend it to like on my track page or sell it as a pick ever. But this is definitely a fight I'm really excited for. It's a camp that has a lot of success, and his accolades on paper are that the line's off. But it's really just on paper.
Yeah, it's tough because there is that world of UFC debut, massive leap in competition, and he's 25 years old. So it's not like training with Bob Font and Cater will get him there in 5 years from now. It's more like, is he ready for the 16-1 Polish monster first fight on short notice? You know, we'll see.
Mhm.
I might follow you in on the lottery ticket. Abdul Razak Al Hassan takes on Claudio Ribeiro. This one is this one also short notice?
There's so many short notice.
This one, it's not scratched
Al
out.
Hassan was
Who's Al Hassan supposed to fight? But nonetheless, I mean, I guess we got to work with what we got. This is minus 105, minus 115. So it's pretty much pick 'em. Abdul Razak Al Hassan is the minus 105. It opened at Abdul Razak Al Hassan at minus 115, went to minus 130, and is just kind of tapered back. I mean, this one's the one I'm most interested to hear your take on. And the reason why is because you have a guy who is coming off the Contender Series, very dominant finish. But when you look outside of his Contender Series fight, he has fought in a similar vein to 0-1, 0-1, 0-1, 24-20, 8-6. And so you have a guy who is UFC weathered, who has a ton of power, who trains at Fortis MMA, who is coming off fights that went to the bell, like of Joaquin Buckley. Is this underpriced or overpriced? I mean, this seems like a very playable fight at PK. The question is where?
You know, I'm leaning towards Claudio.
Me too. Me too.
And Al Hassan is a guy who's really fun to watch. I think when we first broke him down, it was right before his spell of really bad results. And we broke it down, Al Hassan by murder in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's because he throws nukes, and when they land, people go to sleep. But he struggles to carry that power over even 5 minutes. And when he gets out of that first round, he really, really struggles to win. And I know he looked decent against Buckley. I think he'd switched his camp
better.
changing training at elevation. But ultimately, even in that fight, was just getting absolutely touched up and was a step behind and a step slow after the 5th minute. I do think that Rivera can just last. He will be, yeah. That's not getting better. It's his cardio issues are only gonna be more exasperated. And I think that although Ribeiro on the regional scene hasn't fought the highest level opponent, he does look athletic. He looks really powerful. He looks like he's a game striker that can avoid a nuke.
Okay. The other thing too that's interesting is this fight happening at so this is happening at middleweight, and Claudio last weighed in at 180. So I'm wondering, that might have been a missed weight. It's hard to imagine he missed by 11 pounds, maybe a catch weight, but he's an undersized middleweight where Abdul Razak really fills out his build. But yeah, I also lean on the Claudio Ribeiro fight, and I think I will find myself one unit on that side come Saturday. Okay. Main card. We got the juice. Umar Nurmagomedov, 15-0. Met this guy in person. Pretty cool guy. Doesn't speak English. Hony Barcelos on the other side at 17-3. Always game for a tough fight. And this line, Dan, more than any line I've ever seen, is unjustly priced. Umar Nurmagomedov is minus 975. Hony Barcelos plus 675. And this is where
Disrespectful.
And this is where I have a problem, Dan, is it is the only scenario you bet this fight is on the Hony Barcelos side. However, what's the point in having value on a losing ticket? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, I definitely have the value. If you run this fight 500 times, like, Umar's going to win such a high percentage of them. However, this is unjustly priced.
Yeah,
How do you
no,
attack
I agree with everything you said, and like that's obviously it sounds like we don't understand value, but this is a unique sport where you're not going to get the same massive matchup over a extended whatever sample size. So yeah, I don't think Umar loses Raoni Barcelos, but there's no reason that to anyone in the world why
Right.
he's this big of a dog.
So,
So I will be taking a lottery ticket sprinkle,
Okay.
probably a quarter unit on Raoni track too.
yeah,
Just you have to.
I
But
think I'll join you, especially because Raoni's fighting. I mean, he fought Saeed to a unanimous decision victory. I mean, we're
I
talking
do like
about
the over. I don't think that Umar finishes him. I think that
What if-
especially with the way that Umar fights, that they're going to spend a lot of time grappling site or Raoni's as game as anyone comes down there.
the line is somewhat dangerous. It's over 2.5 minus 250. Fight goes to decision. You can get it minus 205, 225. Is that something at that price that tickles your fancy, or is it just more of an idea?
More of an idea.
Okay. Just wanting to clarify. But yeah, I'll probably join you on this lottery ticket as well, because like, I know Umar's going to win. I just know he is. But like, I don't care. This has gotten out of control. And
I mean, Umar's a guy who forget prospects, forget whatever. He could really be holding gold at the end of the year or early next year, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like
yeah,
0-1 bit. He's a real future contender, 100%.
The other thing I want to mention for everybody is this line opened. Vegas opened this line at Umar minus 200, Raoni Barcelos plus 170. Every fight that Umar's been in, he was minus 200 against Raoni, he was minus 500 against Nate Maness, and he was minus 270 against Brian Kelleher. Every one of those three have ran up to where Brian Kelleher closed at minus 1,500. Nate Maness closed at minus 1,300, and currently against Raoni Barcelos, he's closing at 1,000. And it's just, look, I think he holds gold. I think he's phenomenal, but Matt Serra knocked out GSP. Leon Edwards head kicked Kamaru Usman. I mean, you can't say these tickets don't come in. So I will also be joining you on the Raoni Barcelos train. But I don't want people going out there thinking we're telling you that Raoni Barcelos and Umar are equal. You know, I'm just saying that where this line is currently priced, it's hard pressed not to find yourself on Raoni. Ketlin Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington at 135. Ketlin Vieira minus 120. Raquel Pennington plus 100. Lined opened at Ketlin Vieira minus 145, and is kind of, I mean, it got all the way up to like minus 105, and then it's kind of trickled back. So a PK women's fight, Dan, the science won't work, won't help you here. What are you doing?
Yeah, these are two fighters I struggle with. Rocky, definitely the better wrestler, great top control. I think that she'll win this fight as long as she doesn't get stuck on bottom. She's not great off her back at all, and Ketlin has some nice judo throws, but I don't know. I saw a lot of rattling about this fight possibly going under, that Rocky would finish her on the mat, that Ketlin's got dangerous hands. I'm not sure that I agree with that. I think this could be another snoozer that spends a lot of time leaned up against the cage in between that grappling and Muay Thai realm. I tend to lean Rocky. I won't be betting this.
Well, one of the reasons why I want to mention this too is I actually am on a bit of a hot streak here with tailing Rocky. She was in a parlay when she fought Marion Hanel. I mean, that was a gift. She was like minus, what was it? Where was it? Minus 175 against Marion Hanel. And then she started getting a little more love. I laid off the Chiasson fight. It was a little too expensive, but I was on for Pieni Kianzad and Aspen Ladd, and she cashed both those tickets too. So I think I'm actually going to put a half unit tracked on Pennington here in a fight where I think she should be a slight favorite, not a slight dog. So it's a small value play, and it won't be a full unit because I'm not as confident in her as I am in Claudio Ribeiro. So that's
I like
one
that.
of my reasoning. But what's up?
I like where your head's at.
Wait, yeah. So I think that if I were to price this line, I would have Rocky at like minus 140, minus 150. So the fact that I'm getting a plus 100 or plus 105, that to me is something I can sink my teeth into. Okay, now we're starting to get, this is where everyone probably fast forwarded to. So welcome to the Ankle Pick Pod. Punahele Soriano, Roman Kopylov. Punahele minus 155, Roman Kopylov plus 135. Punahele opened at minus 180, so it's actually coming off him a little bit. What's your take?
This is a tough one. And, you know, I think I'm not a believer in Roman Kopylov. He's a guy who's too low volume for me. He doesn't do anything specifically great. And I think that Punahele walks him down and lands a big Hawaiian coconut bomb. I like the Soriano side. I think that's the side I'll end up playing tracked. And I even see a knockout in his future. I think he lands a big right hand after walking him down for a couple rounds, and Kopylov slows down maybe in round 2, early round 3, and just kind of has a moment, one of those mental lapses where he makes the wrong step, gets caught up in his footwork, and eats a right hand.
Dan, I have a question for you. Who was Carl Roberson's most recent win?
Yeah, is it the Roman Kopylov fight?
It is. It is. And that intrigued me. And so I went back and I watched that fight. And
Carl Baby K, the kickboxer, with his like 10 minutes of grappling in that fight.
yeah. And I don't believe Punahele has any interest in going into that realm. However, I think that actually bodes well for him because stylistically, this fight, kind of a dream for him. And he's going to have a guy who's willing to engage in those striking matches. He's going to have a guy who's willing to potentially step into, as you called it, one of those coconut bombs. He's not going to bring the style that Maximov or Brendan Allen brought. He's going to bring the style that Todorovic and Lugian Bula brought. And so I think that this fight for Punahele is a dream, and I'm a little surprised the line's come off as hard as it has. And I think Punahele gets the finish with one of those, what did you call it, coconut bombs?
Oh, I was mixed up my brain here. I was that's Maki Patolo's nickname, isn't it? Not Puna.
But Punahele is still
Puna is the one that throws the coconut.
Yeah,
bomb.
he throws the coconut bombs. Fighting out of Hawaii. So I'm still with it.
We'll call Maki Patolo Puna from now on, and we can call it Punahele coconut bombs.
I'm in for that. But good. So I too am going to find myself a track plan Punahele. What are you looking at? 1 unit, 2 units, risk 1 unit to win 1 unit?
I think I'm going to go risk 2.
Okay. So risk 2 with the minus 150 win. Okay. I like that. I'm going to be in a similar vein as well. I might do to win 1 unit and pay the juice. We'll see. Co-main event, Dan Ige, Damon Jackson. This line is Ige plus or minus 125, Damon Jackson plus 105. This line opened at Damon Jackson minus 160, so it's completely reverted. And I'm seeing for a fight that's priced at even, I'm seeing exactly what you would expect. People on both sides. Whenever I'm on social media, Facebook groups, Twitter, whatever, I see people in the Ige camp. I see people in the Damon Jackson camp. I'm really intrigued by your take, even though I think I know your take. My guess, if I know my buddy, is you're leaning the Ige side.
You'd be correct.
Okay. And I too am leaning the Ige side. But I think Damon Jackson is too dangerous to have anything tracked here. Am I wrong on that? Like, do you think you're going to get your toes in the water? Because you got a guy in Dan Ige who's a black belt in BJJ, a brown belt in judo, and you are getting him at an extremely cheap price for a 31-year-old because of the Korean zombie Josh Emmett, who's currently fighting for an interim belt, and a Movsar Evelev unanimous loss. But we're forgetting about the guy who beat up on Mizrad Bektik, knocked out Gavin Tucker clean, beat Edson Barbosa. So there's two sides to this coin, and a guy who's an extremely weathered UFC veteran, and at the age of 31, Damon Jackson is a very refreshing taste compared to Movsar. But Damon Jackson,
I think
absolute ripper, dude. That Pat Sabatini caught us both by surprise. That was crazy.
Oh, big time. Big time. That was not how I expected that fight to go.
So outside of
you covered it. For me,
outside of Ilya
low.
Dan, outside of Ilya Tapuria, Damon Jackson has won his last 6.
Yeah, but you line up Camuela Kirk and Dan Argueta and Charles Rosa, and Ige's got first round knockouts too.
Yeah, that's fair.
For me, I think you outlined it. Ige is still that dude. He's done no favors to himself by accepting only murderer's row for every single fight he's ever been in. And I think that this is probably the highest the Damon Jackson stock could ever be, and maybe the lowest the Dan Ige stock could ever be. And that's why we're getting a plus in front of it when I line this like really Ige minus 180.
Yeah. See, I had it a little lower. I think you take a similar approach, but before taping and before finding out the lines, we've usually done set the spread for the main card, so we kind of find them out. But I like to look at what I imagine the line is, because we come in to set the spread with like what the line we think it is. And I had Dan Ige minus 160. So to see what you're saying makes sense. My fear is I thought the same thing with Pat Sabatini. And so are we misreading Damon Jackson, or
Ige is so much more game on the feet than Sabatini is. Sabatini is a guy that absolutely needs the fight to be going his way to win. Ige's game everywhere. We saw Ige. I mean, he had multiple takedowns against Cater. He was back and forth in that fight. I mean, he's been game in every single fight he's been in, despite fighting the killer, like literally some of the most.
He has. I mean, going to unanimous decisions with the likes of Josh Emmett, a guy who is fighting for the interim belt, Calvin Cater, Korean Zombie. I mean, even if they're the 49-46s or whatever, I mean, you have a guy who is getting very valuable rounds in, holding his own. That I'm kind of with you. I think all those guys do a lot more damage on Damon Jackson. So again, what do you have here? What do you think about?
I think I'm going to play Ige for 2 units as well.
Wow. This is actually kind of a meaty card for DanKwagers. And I like it too, because we're agreeing on a lot of it. And whenever we've agreed, it has usually bode well for us. Main event. Sean Strickland, Nasruddin Imavov. I've tipped my hand egregiously early, but I'll break it down again anyways. Nasruddin is currently sitting at minus 130. Strickland at plus 110. This opened at like PK 115, 105. So it's moved only a tad, but it's definitely moved. This is a short notice replacement. Strickland was the last main event of 2022. He is subbing in for Kevin Gastelum, who had to withdraw via mouth injury. So, Dan, I've spoiled my hand, so I'm going to lead this one off and then poke holes in my logic here. Sean Strickland, phenomenal striker. We all know that. He's a striker at trade. Nasruddin Imavov, phenomenal striker. Shockingly, a striker at trade. What we've seen out of Nasruddin is an involvement in the ground game. Buckley is a great example. What he did to Shabazian is a great example. Stylistically, this Strickland fight is by far going to be the toughest fight he's been in. because of the way they both like to fight. Strickland likes to fight in the pocket, work off that jab, stay in a phone booth, and Nasruddin will engage there. Here's why I feel comfortable placing Imavov at that. I got it at 110. And here's the reason why I feel comfortable placing it at 110. And I would probably play it all the way up to 140, which I tweeted about. Sean Strickland is lower volume. Sean Strickland leans off that jab. And Sean Strickland's footwork, although deceptive, people clown him for his footwork because he's extremely flat-footed. He's really good at sliding out of the pocket. So I don't want to insult him and say that his footwork is shit. It's not shit. It's just unique. But when you're facing a guy on the other side, like Imavov, I know the Cannonier split decision could have gone either way, and same with Jack Hermanson. They both could have gone either way. But when you look at a guy like Imavov, he brings a very, very unique style. And it's a style where he will be in and out. He will be throwing leg kicks, which Jared Cannonier beat the shit out of Strickland's leg with those leg kicks. And I think that the involvement and the working in of the wrestling for this high-paced 26-year-old is good. My only fear, and the reason why I bopped it down from 2 units against Gaslam to 1 unit here, is because I'm going to be honest, Imavov has shown that he relies solely on head movement, and that could bode for Sean Strickland finding a home. I'm not banking on it. I really think it's unlikely. I just think it's possible. My other small fear, Dan, is cardio issues. Imavov really started to fade at the end of his Buckley fight. He did throw high volume, but he did start to fade in a 3-round fight. Strickland is no stranger to 5-round wars. The only reason why I'm not putting as much stock into that is because Imavov always was training for a 5-round fight. And this fight was always meant to be 5 rounds. Now, we've never seen him go 5 rounds. We haven't seen him since the Buckley fight. So the last we've seen, he started to fade in the end of midway through the 3rd. But I'm kind of
also the 5-round fight that he's training for is a much higher pace fight than a Strickland fight. Gastelum's a guy that is counterpunching with you every time you throw, more so than Strickland working behind that jab.
That too. And so with Imavov, I really like his style. I really like his striking. He really puts together combinations. He's extremely accurate. And outside of Phil Hawes, who is a stylistic nightmare, who I think that if they ran back right now, after he beat up on Shabazian, beat up on Heinisch, and he's 10 minutes of control time against Buckley, where you can see the improvements, I think he wins that one too. And so you have a guy who's 26 years old. Every single fight I watched, the leaps and bounds from the fight before are insane. But this is a step up in competition. I do want to notify that. So I did end up going 1 unit minus 110 for Nasruddin. Please tell me where your head's at. Is it worth adding another unit? Is it worth sticking in my 1 unit? Are you a little nervous about it, or are you maybe even on the other side? What's your take, Dan? Because I value your take.
I'm pretty aligned with your thinking. I ultimately, for me, it's a pass right now. If I do play it, it'll be a maximum of 1 unit, or to win 1 unit on the Imavov side. Sean Strickland's a guy I hate betting on fights that he's included in. He's so hard to predict what Sean Strickland's going to show up, and it's not so much like other guys that are unpredictable. It's what the hell's going on in his brain, and it's always been the case. I mean, even in media day this week, he's talking about his fight versus Derek Brunson like everyone else doesn't know what they're talking about, and how he fought a perfect fight. And that he, like 9 out of 10 times, judges are going to give him that.
Do you mean Cannonier?
It just, yeah. Sorry,
I was just making sure.
Brunson, right?
Sure. Yeah, you said
no,
Brunson.
This fight against Cannonier, just right at the end of the year, he's still talking about how he wouldn't change a thing. He wouldn't be more urgent. He wouldn't fight at a higher pace. He wouldn't. He said it was perfection. He said he was in the Matrix. He didn't get touched. He's a guy who's always had this apparent mythical jujitsu that people talk about, and he flies out to train with Hamzat, or I think it's even the other way around. Hamzat flies him out to get grappling rounds in with. And I don't think he's ever going to grapple in a fight. It's just, like he's a guy that's got so many question marks and could do so many things that I get uncomfortable betting on any fight he's a part of. And I do think that in a pure striking match, we saw how undisciplined he is. We saw how he's just going to want to get he gets punched in the face, and more than anything, he loses his game plan.
Yeah. And he tries to get it back. And it's the same reason why betting on Michel Pereira can scare you. Michel Pereira is different, but it's like, remember when Sean Strickland fought Jack Marshman, and he's just piecing Jack Marshman up for every fight. And they're in the third round, and Sean is literally leaning in, letting him hit his face and being like, come on, like having a meltdown. And it's like, when you're putting your hard-earned cash on someone, you want to know that they're going out there with full intentions of not getting into a firefight, not making dumb decisions, not willing to get hit or be hit to get his off, you know? And so that was almost a point, Dan, that you're mentioning that I actually put into the camp of a positive for the Imavov backers. I mean, you saw that grappling match. I know you did. At Submission Underground, where he got flying rear naked choked. Like, let's be real. I mean, Strickland's not going to come out here and put the hurt on Nasruddin. I mean, Edmund Shabazian can wrestle. Ian Heinisch can wrestle. They got smoked. Via finishes. So I love watching Imavov progress. And I think that, I know we say this a lot, and we've pretty much always been right. But I think that this is going to be a big time coming out party for Imavov, where, similar to Dolidze, you're not going to get these prices again. This seems like a very good price on a guy who has so much potential. I think that win or lose, I think I'll be happy with the fact that I had Imavov at -110. Even if he goes out there and gets knocked out, I think I would sleep like a baby knowing I got -110 on a guy that I fully believe can be a contender at middleweight.
Against the guy coming off the couch.
Right. Still clearly focused on what previously happened.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he loves to fight. He's not a guy that just doesn't go to the gym when he's not in camp. Like he goes to get licks in because he's like Happy Gilmore. He craves the contact, taking the whatever heaters off the chest. But yeah, he's not in fight camp. And then
yeah, I love Strickland. It's just hard for me to not lean Imavov. It's also worth mentioning that this is taking place at 205. The only reason why I want to mention that is because Sean Strickland used to fight at 170. And so I'm not saying he's going to be, he's small for 185. I know he cut a lot of weight. He is small for 205 though. And I know it's nice because Imavov's a 185er, so it's not like he's going up to fight like a serious 205er. But I think that come fight night, Imavov's going to look in better shape, pretty significantly heavier. So that's also another point for Imavov, in my opinion. So last thing, Dan, we're going to do ankle lock a little different this year. And we're going to do it how we used to do it, where because we're not in a game and because there's no consequences, we're not going to pick one every week if there's not one that we are solely on. On the flip side, I think that if there are 2 picks or 3 picks that you and I are just like 5 units, we love this shit, we can pick more than one. My question to you, and we're going to track the record. These are just our, let's say one day we're like, we have our track picks and these are just the bomb, the ankle locks. Do you have one for this week that you're like, I want to ankle lock this mug? I am so confident in this pick. There's no way this pick loses. I love it. I want to ankle lock it. Do you got one?
The only one I'm considering, and I've got itchy trigger finger here, maybe just because we haven't done one in 5 or so weeks. But I love the spot for Punahele Soriano. I really do.
Is it weird that I was between Ige and also Punahele? My only fear with Punahele is we're putting a lot of stock in a guy who hasn't shown us a whole bunch. I mean, he's only fought 4 times in the UFC, or 5 times, but losing 2 of them. This is such a good spot for him, though.
We can watch weigh-in still and make a decision.
Yeah. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to do ankle locks as often as we can. You might get 2 some weeks. You might get 0 some weeks. The fact that we don't need to force them on those cards where Danny and I were scratching our heads is nice. But I want to pretend like this is just like, let's say you only follow ankle locks. Here's how you would do. Because Danny and I know we're positive cappers. We've been positive tracked for a while. What can we do with just the creme de la creme? So I guess we'll post it on Twitter. That's usually the easy way to go about it. Okay.
At Ankle Pick Pod on Twitter.
Anything else, gentlemen?
That's all I got. See y'all next week.
All right. Ho ha!